I'm right here in Miami. Come get me. Arrest me.
My message to the UK government is I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not afraid of the UK lawyers. I'm not afraid of the UK judge. I'm not afraid of any of it because I've done nothing wrong.
I'm in Beverly Hills. Come get me. I'm not hard to find. I post my location on Twitter and I'm 6'3", walking around Beverly Hills with a crowd of adoring fans.
Now, Andrew Tate's latest arrest has made major headlines. British authorities are currently seeking to extradite Andrew and his brother Tristan from the United States to the UK, where they now face a combined 49 criminal charges. Both brothers have denied every allegation and are fighting extradition from the United States. But while looking into everything, I came across all these older clips of Andrew Tate speaking as if powerful institutions would eventually come after him.
Tell everyone I'm a human trafficker. You think I'm not versed? You think I'm not ready? I'm a Navy SEAL in this shit. Come get me, raid my house, take my stuff. You think I sleep with a full phone full of evidence? You think I don't wipe my phone every night? You think I'm dumb? Come get me, arrest me, let's do this all over again. I've done it for 4 years in Romania. You think I'm scared of your state jail?
Those statements, as far as I know, did not cause his arrest, but they became more notable once the legal cases against him began to unfold. Long before his latest arrest, Andrew Tate had built a public image around fearlessness, controversy, and the belief that powerful institutions wanted to silence him.
Have you trafficked anybody?
Absolutely not.
Exploited any women for money?
Absolutely not.
And for a while, every controversy only seemed to make him bigger, until eventually everything changed. Andrew Tate is innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Now, as Andrew Tate's audience grew, so did the backlash surrounding him. His most provocative statements spread across social media, and every new controversy seemed to make him even more visible. But Andrew did not treat that criticism as ordinary disagreement. He began framing it as part of something much larger, an organized attempt by powerful institutions to damage his reputation, restrict his influence, and eventually silence him. He called that system the Matrix.
But then I've become massively influential and they see my influence as a counter to their narratives. So, as it's always been since the dawn of human time, when you have a counter narrative or a counter influence, you aim to destroy it.
And as the bans, headlines, and legal problems continued to pile up, Andrew increasingly presented them as connected parts of the same attack. Whenever he was attacked, criticized, or faced legal issues, it was presented as proof that powerful people were afraid of his influence. And for supporters who already believed his explanation, his eventual arrest in Romania appeared to confirm something he had been predicting for months. But there was another side to that story. Andrew's reputation did not only come from headlines, edited clips, or outside enemies. His online business encouraged members to create and repost clips of his most provocative statements. While providing paid memberships, members were reportedly encouraged to choose controversial material because it was more likely to generate views, engagement, and new referrals. And for a long time, Andrew benefited from that system. The controversy made him famous, the outrage made him profitable, and the criticism helped build an audience that increasingly saw any opposition as evidence that he must be telling the truth. But eventually, that same public image that helped make Andrew Tate one of the most recognizable men online would follow him far beyond social media. And that brings us to Romania.
Police in Romania raiding the home of controversial online influencer Andrew Tate. Inside the villa in Bucharest, they find an arsenal of weapons.
Andrew Tate, an internet personality notorious for hate speech, will remain in police custody for 30 days, pending a criminal investigation for human trafficking. Tate, his brother Tristan, and 2 Romanian female suspects were detained by anti-organized crime prosecutors on December 29th on charges of forming an organized crime group to sexually exploit young women.
By the end of 2022, Andrew Tate was no longer just dealing with bans, backlash, or angry headlines. He was now at the center of a criminal investigation that could completely change his life. On December 29, 2022, Romanian authorities raided a property connected to Andrew and Tristan Tate and took both brothers into custody. Investigators accused them of being involved in an organized criminal group built around the exploitation of women. Andrew was also accused of rape. Both brothers denied the allegations from the beginning, but that arrest immediately became one of the biggest stories on the internet. Videos showed Andrew being escorted away by police as cameras and reporters surrounded the property. And almost instantly, the same language he had been using for months came back into the conversation, the Matrix. According to Andrew Tate, this was not simply an investigation, it was the next stage of the system trying to remove him.
Any statement?
There's no evidence against me.
Is this the end of your career, Andrew?
Absolutely not. This case file is empty. We've done nothing wrong. The case
Andrew,
file is completely empty.
Did you hurt any girl?
But Romanian prosecutors were telling a very different story. Romanian prosecutors alleged that Andrew, Tristan, and 2 Romanian women had formed an organized criminal group that recruited women through what authorities describe as the lover boy method. Prosecutors claim that some women had been misled with promises of romantic relationships before being pressured to produce sexually explicit online content for the group's financial benefit. Andrew and Tristan denied the allegations and said that the case against them was unfounded. But regardless of which version people believed, Andrew Tate was now in a situation that could not be solved with another viral interview. He was placed in detention, his movements were restricted, and for the first time, the man who had built his image around complete control no longer had control over what happened next. Andrew would spend several months in detention before being moved to house arrest. During that period, his supporters became even more convinced that his predictions had come true. To them, the arrest was proof that he had become too influential, while his critics viewed it as proof that the image of being untouchable had finally collapsed. But the truth was that the case was far from over. In fact, this was also the period when Andrew Tate's influence seemed to explode even further. Clips of Andrew were everywhere, and his speeches were constantly being reposted across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. His videos were reaching millions of people, with his influence becoming particularly visible among teenage boys and young men. For some young viewers, Andrew was not simply another internet celebrity. He appeared to understand their frustration. He spoke directly to young men who felt ignored, unmotivated, or uncertain about their place in the world.
It started off with this man who was buff and tall and had the success and the things that, you know, every teenage boy would want. I really felt tied to him because I was like, oh, finally someone I can look up to with a way of being, a way that I can be as a man, kind of in a way that doesn't exist anymore.
And he gave them a simple message: become stronger, make money, stop complaining, and take control of your life. Some people saw that message as motivating, while others believed it came packaged with damaging ideas about women, power, and relationships. But either way, the arrest did not erase his influence. If anything, it made the story surrounding him even more powerful, because now Andrew was no longer only telling his audience that the system wanted to silence him. He was sitting inside a jail cell while they watched it happen in real time. Even from inside detention, Andrew continued framing the experience as an attempt to break him. According to multiple media reports, an email sent to subscribers under Andrew's name described the conditions inside the jail and claimed that authorities were trying to break him. The message said he had been placed in a cell without light and described cockroaches, lice, and bedbugs inside the facility. Rather than presenting himself as defeated, the message portrayed the experience as another test he intended to survive. That only strengthened the story around him. To his supporters, Andrew was no longer simply predicting that powerful institutions would come for him. He was now living through the exact sequence he had spent months warning them about. However, the legal case itself was nowhere near as simple as the internet made it seem. In March 2023, Andrew and his brother, Tristan, were moved from detention to house arrest, and several months later, those restrictions were reduced again, allowing them to leave their home while remaining under judicial supervision. Then, in June 2023, Romanian prosecutors formally indicted the brothers alongside 2 Romanian women. For Andrew's critics, the indictment appeared to show that the investigation was moving forward, but Andrew continued to deny every allegation and maintain that prosecutors had no real evidence against him. And he was not only defending himself inside Romania, because in July 2023, Andrew and Tristan filed a defamation lawsuit in Palm Beach County, Florida, against one of the women connected to the Romanian investigation and several members of her family. The brothers claimed that she had falsely accused them of imprisoning her, and that those accusations helped trigger the investigation that led to his arrest. They sought millions of dollars in damages, arguing that the allegations had cost them their freedom, damaged their reputations, and harmed their businesses. The woman, however, denied the brothers' claims, while her lawyer described the lawsuit as an attempt to pressure and intimidate someone who had spoken to Romanian authorities. So while prosecutors in Romania were trying to build a criminal case against Andrew and Tristan, the brothers were building their own case in Florida against someone they believed had helped create it. The result was an extraordinary situation in which each side claimed that the other was using false allegations in the legal system to cause harm. As the Romanian case moved through the courts, the story became slower, more complicated, and increasingly uncertain. For months, judges examined whether the indictment had been prepared correctly, whether the evidence had been collected legally, and whether the case could proceed toward a full criminal trial. At different points, it appeared that Andrew and Tristan were getting closer to that moment. But Before the Romanian case could be resolved, another country entered the picture. In March 2024, Andrew and his brother Tristan were detained again after British authorities issued arrest warrants connected to a completely separate collection of allegations in the United Kingdom. A Romanian court approved Britain's request to extradite them, but postponed the extradition until the Romanian proceedings were finished. Andrew Tate was now caught between two separate legal systems. One case was unfolding around him in Romania, while another was already waiting for him in Britain. As the pressure continued to build, Andrew did more than simply maintain his innocence. He pushed back publicly, questioned the evidence, and continued presenting the cases as part of a much larger effort to silence him.
So I have a narrative which is countering their narratives that they control, and they feel like that I need to be punished for that. And they're massively influential and powerful, and now I find myself in the position I'm in with a matrix attack.
To Andrew and many of his supporters, the fact that the legal battles kept expanding did not prove that he was guilty. It proved that the supposed system he had been warning them about was closing in, and Andrew was not staying quiet about it.
They don't want you to be big unless you're owned so they can tell you what to say. I'm not owned, so I can say whatever the fuck I want, which is why they're trying to ruin my life. And guess what? I don't give a
No.
Put me in jail.
No, and do you know what?
I'm a tough guy.
But while Andrew continued defending himself publicly, the original Romanian case was still moving through the courts. In April 2024, a Romanian court initially ruled that the case could proceed toward trial, which appeared to be a major step forward for the prosecution. Andrew and Tristan appealed that decision. Around that same period, the Florida defamation case also moved forward. In July 2024, a Palm Beach County judge ruled that the central part of the brothers' lawsuit against the women could proceed, although some claims and defendants were removed from the case. It was not a complete victory for Andrew and Tristan, but they would still be allowed to pursue their claim that the women had made false accusations against them and that those accusations had contributed to their arrest and damaged their reputations. That meant Andrew was now fighting legal battles from several directions at once. In Romania, he was challenging the indictment and the evidence before the case could reach trial. In Britain, authorities were seeking his eventual extradition, while in Florida, he was attempting to prove that one of the accusations connected to the Romanian investigation had been fabricated. Each case was separate, but together they created the impression that the legal pressure surrounding Andrew Tate was expanding faster than any one court could resolve it. Then the Romanian prosecution began running into serious problems. Certain evidence was excluded. Prosecutors were ordered to correct problems in the indictment, and questions were raised about whether parts of the case had been prepared legally. What once appeared to be a straightforward path toward trial was now becoming a very complicated fight over whether the case could even proceed in the form prosecutors had presented it. In December 2024, the Bucharest Court of Appeals ruled that the trial could not move forward in its existing form and sent the case back to prosecutors. The court identified problems with the indictment and ruled that some of the evidence could not be used. That did not mean Andrew and Tristan had been found innocent. It also did not mean that the allegations had disappeared or been proven false. But it was still a major setback for the prosecution because the original case could no longer move forward in its current form. To Andrew and many of his supporters, the ruling felt like vindication. They believed it supported his argument that prosecutors had moved against him before building a case strong enough to survive serious legal scrutiny. But the ruling had not cleared him. It had only stopped the original prosecution from moving forward, leaving prosecutors to reconsider and potentially rebuild the case. But even as the original Romanian case became more uncertain, his legal problems were not disappearing. Romanian authorities had also opened a second investigation involving separate allegations, including forming an organized criminal group, human trafficking, trafficking minors, sexual intercourse with a minor, and money laundering. Andrew and Tristan denied those allegations as well. Neither Romanian investigation had resulted in a completed trial, leaving the cases unresolved rather than ending in either conviction or exoneration. Then in February 2025, the legal battle in Florida took another turn. The woman Andrew and Tristan had sued filed her own lawsuit against the brothers, alleging that they had lured her to Romania, coerced her into online sex work, and later attempted to intimidate and defame her after she spoke to authorities. Andrew and Tristan denied those claims, leaving both sides accusing the other of fabricating the story and abusing the courts. Only weeks later, something unexpected happened. Romanian prosecutors relaxed the restrictions preventing Andrew and Tristan from leaving the country, and in late February 2025, the brothers boarded a private jet and traveled to Florida. For the first time since the original Romanian arrest, Andrew Tate was back on American soil, and symbolically, America represented something completely different from the world he had been living in. And after more than 2 years of detention, house arrest, and travel restrictions, and repeated court appearances, Andrew arrived in Florida, presenting the moment as a return to freedom. Andrew stepped off a private jet beside his brother and spoke to reporters about his innocence. Andrew stated that none of them had ever been convicted of a crime and argued that they should be treated as innocent unless proven guilty. But although he could now travel, he had not been cleared in Romania and was still required to report whenever Romanian judicial authorities summoned him. And this arrival for Andrew Tate and his supporters felt like a victory. He had spent years portraying himself as someone being targeted by institutions and now had left Romania and landed in a country built around ideas of freedom, individual rights, and resistance to government overreach. But beneath that image, the reality was much more complicated. Reports emerged that U.S. officials had raised the Tate brothers' situation with Romanian counterparts that fueled questions about whether American political pressure influenced the decision to let them travel, although Romanian officials denied that they had been pressured into changing the brothers' restrictions. And Florida was not simply waiting to welcome him.
But the reality is no, Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct in the air. And I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified. I found out through the media.
Shortly after the brothers arrived, Governor Ron DeSantis said they were not welcome in Florida and said state officials would examine whether Florida had jurisdiction over any alleged conduct. Within days, Florida Attorney General James Utmeyer announced what he described as an active criminal investigation into Andrew and Tristan Tate. Utmeyer said the Office of Statewide Prosecution had been instructed to issue subpoenas and execute search warrants. Officials did not publicly identify what specific Florida charges, if any, were being considered, and the announcement itself was not proof that either brother had committed a crime. But before Florida officials announced that investigation, Andrew had already made his position clear when he first arrived in the States. Andrew Tate once again doubled down and argued that nor him and Tristan had ever been convicted of a crime and said that they should still be treated as innocent unless proven guilty.
We've yet to be convicted of any crime in our lives ever. We have no criminal record anywhere on the planet ever. Our case was dismissed on the 19th of December in Romania under the Biden administration. And our prosecutor recently decided, because we have no active indictment in court, to let us go and return.
That was the argument Andrew carried into Florida. He had faced years of accusations and legal restrictions, but he had not been convicted.
You know, after 6 years of being called a terrible person and a sexual predator, I've never had a trial. I haven't beaten a trial. I haven't gone to trial and won. No, I've never been to trial ever.
At the same time, the Romanian investigation had not disappeared. British authorities were still seeking his eventual extradition, and Florida officials were now beginning their own inquiry. Andrew later expanded on that argument, saying that years of accusations had still not resulted in a completed criminal trial. In his view, every new investigation added to the public perception that he was guilty, even though none of those cases being discussed had ended in a conviction. But almost immediately after arriving in the country that appeared to represent freedom, Andrew found another government institution examining his conduct. Speaking to Candace Owens shortly after arriving, Andrew discussed the reaction he was receiving in Florida and defended himself against the investigation.
And if they think they have evidence to arrest me, I'm sure that's exactly what they're going to do. I'm waiting. I will turn on the kettle at 5 a.m. every morning. Hot coffee for every officer. Let's go.
Florida officials presented the situation differently. They said their inquiry concerned whether the state had jurisdiction and whether any Florida laws had been violated. So even though Andrew had finally left Romania, he had not escaped the legal scrutiny surrounding him. He had simply entered a new country and almost immediately found himself facing another investigation. At the same time, the legal fight in Palm Beach was already waiting for him. Andrew and Tristan were involved in competing lawsuits with one of the women connected to the Romanian case, and shortly after arriving, they asked a Florida court to issue a temporary restraining order against her. The request itself did not mean that a judge had granted the order or accepted the brothers' claims. It was just another step in a legal battle where both sides accused the other of causing serious harm. Andrew had arrived in America presenting the trip as a return to freedom, but he was now dealing with a Florida investigation, an ongoing civil battle, and unresolved legal proceedings in Romania and Britain. And instead of responding cautiously, Andrew responded defiantly. But despite the defiance and all the speculation that he might remain in the United States, Andrew eventually returned to Romania. In March 2025, him and his brother boarded another private flight and returned to Romania to fulfill their legal obligations. After arriving near Bucharest, Andrew told reporters that innocent men don't run from anything and said they would clear their names in court. To his supporters, that return showed that Andrew was not attempting to escape the investigation. To his critics, returning voluntarily did not resolve any of the allegations or legal battles still surrounding him. After Andrew returned to Romania, the separate case waiting in Britain became much more concrete. For more than a year, the public knew that British authorities wanted the brothers extradited, but the exact scale of the case had not been publicly confirmed. Then in May of 2025, the Crown Prosecution Service revealed that it had previously authorized 21 charges against Andrew and Tristan before the 2024 extradition warrants were issued. Andrew faced 10 charges involving allegations of rape, actual bodily harm, human trafficking, and controlling prostitution for financial gain. Tristan faced 11 separate charges, and both brothers denied every allegation. The British case was no longer simply a distant warrant hanging in the background. There were now specific criminal charges waiting for them on the other side. But British authorities still faced one major obstacle. The Romanian court had ruled that Andrew and Tristan would not be surrendered until the legal proceedings in Romania were finished. So even as the Romanian cases became slower and more uncertain, they were also preventing Britain from completing the brothers' extradition. British police and prosecutors could continue working on a case, but the brothers could not yet be physically transferred to the United Kingdom. Alongside the British criminal case, 4 women were also pursuing a separate civil lawsuit in England involving allegations of rape, physical violence, and coercive control, said to have occurred between 2013 and 2015. Andrew denied those allegations and maintained that the sexual relationships had been consensual. Because this was a civil lawsuit rather than a criminal prosecution, it represented another legal front completely separate from the criminal cases in Romania and Britain. By this point, Andrew was no longer facing one clear legal battle. Romania had 2 unresolved investigations, Britain had criminal charges and an outstanding extradition request. 4 women were pursuing separate civil claims in England, and Florida had competing lawsuits alongside a publicly announced state investigation. These proceedings were separate and involved different allegations, courts, and legal standards. But taken together, they created a situation where every time one part of the story appeared to slow down, another part seemed to move forward. Then in April 2026, a Romanian court lifted the remaining preventative judicial control measures against Andrew and Tristan. For the first time since the original arrest, the brothers were no longer subject to those particular movement and reporting restrictions. In simple terms, they no longer had to follow the same check-in requirements or limits on where they could travel. But the underlying investigations had not been closed, and the ruling was not an acquittal or declaration of innocence. It, however, changed the restrictions placed on the brothers while the legal proceedings remained unresolved. Only 1 month later, Romanian prosecutors expanded one of their investigations again by adding an allegation that Andrew had incited hatred and discrimination against women through public statements made between 2021 and 2024. Andrew denied the allegation, but the development showed that even after years of delays, excluded evidence, and courtroom setbacks, the Romanian investigation was still expanding. At the same time, the legal pressure from Britain was becoming much more direct. In July 2026, the Crown Prosecution Service announced 38 additional charges, bringing the combined number of UK charges that both brothers were facing to 59. The additional allegations covered conduct said to have occurred between 2010 and 2017. They included rape, sexual assault, trafficking-related offenses, actual bodily harm, and offenses relating to indecent images of a child and extreme pornography. These were criminal charges, not findings of guilt. Andrew and Tristan continued to deny every allegation. And by this point, British authorities were pursuing the brothers through the United States as well. Andrew and Tristan were, of course, like we all know, arrested in Miami by the United States Marshals Service on federal warrants connected to Britain's extradition request. They were taken into federal custody and began contesting their removal from the United States, opening yet another legal process in another country. But before they can be sent to the UK, a US court first has to decide whether Britain's request meets the legal requirements. Even if the court approves it, the final decision on whether to hand them over would still be made by the US government. Their lawyers described the UK case as politically motivated and said the brothers would fight extradition.
Yes, it's politically motivated. There's no question about it. Everybody knows that Andrew and Tristan Tate are innocent. Andrew and Tristan are innocent. They've never done nothing wrong. They shouldn't be extradited for crimes they did not commit.
Andrew and Tristan continued denying every allegation. British prosecutors maintained that the brothers were facing properly authorized criminal charges involving several alleged victims, while the United States is currently in the process of deciding whether the requirements for extradition can be met.